Yay! Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thrilled that you're here to watch this. Thanks for watching the replay. Without any further delay, I would love to introduce this week's guest. Today's guest has been there and done that. She's a seasoned stand-up comic and speaker, wife, stay-at-home mom, reluctant runner, and cancer survivor. She knows how it feels to be stressed out, where finding the time to recharge seems as impossible as figuring out Common Core math. Now, companies and organizations hire her to customize an on-message comedy experience centered around their values to tackle stress and burnout. Her talks are part keynote and part comedy show that makes audiences feel seen, heard, and appreciated one laugh at a time. Please join me in welcoming Heather Tolley-Bauer.
Yay! I'm so happy to be here. And you nailed it. You nailed that intro. You know how hard I've worked on that intro. So
I know.
you nailed it.
Not a single word was amiss. Holly, Heather.
No, everybody does that. Oh my gosh, Robbie,
It is so
everybody
common.
does that.
I never done that before because I always see your name printed in front of me.
I know. And then you
Heather,
have to say it. And then it's like it's a little brain teaser. Heather Tolley-Bauer becomes Holly. And honestly, if I would have known I was going to stay in comedy, I would have just changed my name to Holly. But I did not.
you could have scrunched it.
I would have just created my own name. I would have had a stage name, but no, I didn't think I was going to last.
Yeah, and you're still doing your thing. Well, welcome from your place in Atlanta, Georgia.
Thank you.
As you know, this show about building strong networks, and the context is leadership. So tell me, how do you define leadership, and when did you realize you had the skills to lead?
So, how do I define leadership? I think that leadership is when you can bring people along with you. So, I think about it in terms I think about it in these terms. So I might answer your question in reverse. I've always known I was a leader, and I was thinking about this, and I don't ever remember being called bossy. And I think that, like, that's the key, right? Like, when you can get people on the same page and make them feel like they are a part of it and that they, had a say in it, and still get them to do what you see needs to be done, to me, that's leadership. That's what it means to me, is not forcing myself on people, but bringing people along
Bring
with
people
me.
along. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you somehow avoided getting labeled with the word bossy growing up.
Can you imagine? I mean, I'm 53 years old. I was born and raised in a time when, not only were kids supposed to be, seen and not heard, but women as well. And, yeah, but I've always been a leader. And I was thinking about this. I was listening to one of your episodes. So I knew you were going to ask me this question. And I was like, when did I know I was a leader? And here's what I came up with. When I was in the fifth grade, okay, 1980, I was in the Girl Scouts. And the Girl Scouts, where I grew up in Centralia, Illinois, had a father-daughter banquet. And all the Girl Scout troops in my town did a skit, and that was the entertainment. And so I wrote and produced the skit for my troops, father-daughter banquet. And it was a little riff on Queen's Another One Bites the Dust. But it was in the construct of the Gong Show. Okay, now I don't know if the listeners know about the Gong Show, but the Gong Show was, one of those cheesy do you know about the Gong Show? You're
Oh,
young.
yeah. No,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
turning
yeah.
49 this year.
Yeah, okay. So you
I
get
love
the
this
Gong Show.
generation.
Yeah, and then I got to be Chuck Barris. But it wasn't that I took that on and produced that and made that happen. I realized that what made me a leader was that my troop nominated me to do that.
Yep.
And that's when I was like, "Oh, I'm somebody who people trust to get things done
Yeah.
and to do it." So, 10 years old, I produced my first off Broadway.
Many offs, but still, I
Many
mean,
off.
as you said, Heather, people saw that you had the capability to pull this off, and they wanted you to take the lead and tell them what to do to make it all happen, and that's different than you self-nominating and then demanding everyone pay attention to you. Or if you had a parent who was, like, underwriting the cost of something and therefore you were put in charge because of that, association, like, the fact that your peers were like, "Oh my gosh, Heather, please help us do this."
Yeah.
That's a good sign that you're leading people, and I
Yeah.
also love that you went back far enough to, like, the playground. I always wonder what kids were like when what my guests were like as kids, like, not just 5th grade, but I'm even thinking, like, on the playground and, like, or were you the kid organizing kids to get together? Did teachers sort of hand you,
Yeah, yeah.
like,
I
the dry
always got the
erasers to, like, organize?
papers. Like, I always got like, "Heather, hand out the papers."
Yeah.
"Heather, help me grade the papers." Yes, I was very much that kid that just sorta took charge. I think it was because I'm a middle child. And I'm 3 of 4 in my household, and stuff just needed to get done. And so, chaos and uncertainty sort of like caused me a lot of anxiety. And so I was like, listen, if nobody else is going to do it, I'm going to do it. So I did. I was the one who was organizing the how we got together as kids and what we did or whatever, making the suggestions, making the plan or whatever. And yeah, I was just I think it was because I have a low tolerance for chaos.
Mhm.
I think that's where that comes from.
Did you end up running for any formal office, like school president, something or other type thing?
I did. So, the other thing was, so when I was in the 8th grade, I did not run for high school student council. I ran the campaign for my friend who was running. And that was the other thing that happened when I realized that I'm just an organized thinker. I just like to organize things, which I think the 2 things go hand in hand. I think if you are a leader, you're somebody who organizes stuff, and if you are somebody who organizes stuff, then you are a leader. I think the 2 things come together. So it wasn't until my freshman year when I was running that I ran for student council office. And so then I was on student council my whole um, the rest of my high school experience, and that really informed my leadership, and it shaped my leadership, and it actually led to me pursuing a career in public relations.
Oh, interesting.
Isn't that
Getting
crazy?
a little taste of that, yeah.
Yeah.
I ran for some office one of those early years of high school and didn't win, but like a year or so later, my school talked about maybe doing recycling. This is like again early 90s. So talking about maybe doing some recycling. And so I stepped forward and I got all these people and players together to like get that to actually happen. And I ended up having the student government making signs for my project using their funds.
Yeah, see?
Like, I wasn't actually on the student whatever council body thing, but, like, when I created a school-wide it actually became a district-wide program.
Oh my
Um,
gosh,
but
see? I
that's
mean,
the kind of
yeah,
stuff, like, you don't need to have the formal title all the time.
no, and when you are a connector or a weaver
Yeah,
of people and resources and energy and opportunity, then there you have it. One of the most important things I did when I was on student council is I co-chaired the our blood drive. We did our student council did a spring blood drive every year, and we broke the record for the most blood collected in a 1-day high school blood drive across the country. We broke the record. And that really was that moment of, I was probably like a junior or senior in high school, but that was that moment of
yeah,
using my love for communications, because I really geek out on communications. I'm just such a communications geek. My love of communications and purpose and messaging and cause
great.
related marketing, and it really like launched me into my pursuit of a public relations career. which I did for a long time.
So did you head off then into college with the PR as sort of the plan that you were going to get into public relations?
So no, I did not. I went off to college with the plan. So, okay, when I was going off to college, I graduated high school in 1988. So when I was going off to college, there in my area, there were no public relations degrees. So I went into radio and television broadcasting
Hmm.
and I went to a community college first. Then when I got to my 4-year school, I went to SIU Edwardsville, Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville. Go Cougars. I I I had to petition the business school to allow me to take marketing classes because I was a non-business major. Because I knew I wanted to go into public relations, but that didn't exist. So I had to sort of cull together my
Hmm.
own degree in public relations before the school even offered public relations.
That's a skill set on its own, like knowing something and then figuring out how to take disparate pieces of information and making it something new. And also self advocacy at that age, like determining this is what you wanted and you're willing to stick your neck out to do it and get your way, and then of course make people realize they should have had this degree available. Did
Well, and,
you?
a
Yeah,
lot of people went into public relations. They did, broadcasting, and then they went into public relations because they understood the news cycle. They understood how the
right.
how the business worked, and that's how people flowed into public relations. They were journalism majors. So I had a major in my majored in radio and television broadcasting, got my BS degree, which cracks me up. BS in broadcasting just fits. It just sounds right. and and then I minored in journalism and then minored in marketing. And not only did I get them to like believe in like in me, like they were like, okay, yeah, we will let you do this, but don't make us look like an idiot. You know what I mean? Like there was some pressure on me to like make it worth their while. And so it all worked out. It was good.
By the time you finished college, was the career path pretty much laid out in front of you? Did you know where you were going to go the first few years out of school?
No, because I was still living in the area of Southern Illinois, and there weren't a lot of public relations jobs there, nor were there like a lot of broadcasting jobs there. So I sort of again created my own path. I became a now back in the late 80s, early 90s at this point, drug and alcohol prevention was like a really being funded at the state level. So I became a drug and alcohol prevention coordinator, which let me put my communication skills to use because I was creating public service announcements and campaigns and speaking to kids about don't do drugs and yeah all of
Sorry,
that
I'm having
stuff.
such a flashback. This is your brain. This is your
Did
brain
you
on
rate on
drugs.
drugs? Yeah. Yeah, 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 for sure.
Good,
Yeah.
strong message that I'm
I
still
wish I
hearing in
could
my
take
head.
I couldn't take credit for that public service
Yeah, that
announcement,
would be a good
but
one.
that would have been a good one. That would have been a good one. So, again, I sort of like took the opportunity, the job that was available to me, and I sort of just crafted it into really taking on a public relations role. And that's what I did for a while.
What led you to change that path? I mean, that's a worthwhile endeavor. Like you're putting energy into something that's needed. Why was there a shift?
I was well, those jobs are really grant funded and dependent on, grant funding and things like that. And as that shifted and changed, and then also I was driving, oh my gosh, this is what we do in the Midwest sometimes. Was driving an hour one way to get to that job and which was in a community health center. And so there were some other parts of the job that sort of came with it to keep, to get the funding. I was being funded by like three different areas, and which also meant I had to do like crisis communications, which meant I'd have to like answer the crisis hotline. And I was not equipped for that at all. So I had the opportunity to take a job that was closer to my home. So then I went to go work for the community college where I that I had attended in my community was their non-credit. It was called community education. So that was all the classes that we were offering that weren't for college credit. So it was kind of like ballroom dance
Yeah, like
and
any kind of
adult ed stuff.
adult
Yeah,
ed, sign up for
recreational.
recreational fun things to learn. Yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah, so that
Yeah.
people had an experience with their community college, and that was a ton of fun. I did that for a few years, and I didn't really work in corporate public relations until, a couple of years later when, my husband now and I moved to Connecticut. But I had a pit stop with the American Red Cross, and then I came and then I'm old, Robbie. I've had a lot of chapters.
Well, I was just thinking, like, you were almost a decade out of undergrad the time you had an opportunity to actually use your degree in a formal way.
I was probably not quite a decade, but let's see, 23. Yeah, I mean, I was in my late 20s. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I didn't think about it that way. Thanks.
But you were using it all the whole time. It
Yeah.
sounds like you found I mean, the kind of skills you learned were applicable in lots of situations.
Well,
And
that's the thing about communications
yeah.
is it's a lot like sales, right? Like you're selling all the time, whether you
Mm,
are a salesperson or not. You are communicating all the time, all the
right.
time. So that skill set and that love of it has served me well because you have to be able to persuade people, inform and persuade people to do a lot of different things.
Was PR everything you thought it would be once you finally got to have that, like, corporate role?
Yeah, yeah, it was, and then some. It was so before that, my husband and I, we weren't married yet. That's a whole nother story. That's a whole different podcast. Um, we weren't married yet, but he had been offered a job in Connecticut, and so I was trying to find my own job in Connecticut so that I could move out there so that we could stay together. And so this was 1996, 1997. And I mean, think about this, Robbie. The internet was like brand spanking new. Like the internet was, you didn't have, people didn't have home computers. You would go to a computer library, right? You would go into a computer, like a center, right?
Yep.
And you would log on and you would like dial up modem, blah, 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 blah. So I found a job on the internet with the Connecticut American Red Cross, their blood services program. Who knows blood better than me? Nobody. Why? Because on my resume, what had I done? Had the most successful one-day high school blood
Look at
drive.
that. Comes back. Great callback.
I know, great callback, right? And, but this was before, LinkedIn, da 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 da. So here's what I did. I was applying for a public relations job, a job in their communications department. I created a campaign for them, sent it to them, and said, hire me, don't hire me, use it, don't use it. But here's a campaign that I created for you. And it got me an interview. So I flew to Connecticut, and did the interview, and they said, "Listen, we love you. We can't offer you the communications job. We sort of have already done that, but we would love for you to work in our blood services area." So I took a job with them to create to coordinate blood drives in a particular area, which was very much a sales job. And you were
Mhm.
responsible for promoting your own blood drives and recruiting your own blood drives and making it successful. So again, still not in corporate public relations,
Right. Using all these skills.
but using all the skills. So then I did that for about a year or so, and then I got my corporate PR job, and it was everything I hoped it would be.
Did you finally get that role in the PR job through networking, or, like, was it another one of these just found something and applied for it?
It was through networking. It was through going to the local Chamber of Commerce job fair,
Mhm.
and which is how it was done back then.
Yep.
You went to job fairs. And you had to, like, talk to people face to face, and you had to sell them on you. And we took our little paper resumes, and we had to say, "This isn't okay, so this is what you're looking for, but this is what I do, and I think you want me and not this thing that you're looking for." Like, you had to sell yourself. So that's what I did. So I was talking to somebody and they said, I know somebody, and they were like 3 tables down, and so they walked me down there and they said, "We can't use her, but we think you can," and I got the job.
Wow. Putting yourself out there, making the pitch.
Yeah,
That's
crazy.
awesome. You're bringing me back to all these big gymnasium setups. Yeah, of course.
Yes.
That's great. So I know you today through Innovation Women, which is a wonderful organization that Bobby Carlton runs. And
Yes.
particularly, you and I know each other through a weekly event that she hosts every Friday called Speaker Friends,
Yeah.
because she says speakers need friends. And the focus of Innovation Women is getting more women and other underrepresented voices on stages. And I am thrilled that I get to be a member and get to support and be a part of this community. So I know you now as like a speaker, as a comedian, so when did you shift away from like a corporate 9 to 5 kind of job, which was for you the goal, right? Like,
Mhm.
think about how long that was the goal. I also said, in your intro, you mentioned being a mom. So like somewhere along the way, there's kids and a family and like having to focus time energy on that. So when did your journey sort of shift a little bit, and when did you decide to start focusing more on more of these entrepreneurial kind of endeavors?
So I left my corporate job in 2006 and started my own business, which at the time was a business. It was a personal concierge business. So I was creating like the gig economy before there was a gig economy. So I didn't have any children yet. I was burned out in the corporate world, and I felt like I needed to do something. Like I didn't feel like it would be okay for me to just stay home if I didn't have children. I just felt like that would be frowned upon. So I started a personal concierge business. But then in 2008, the economy tanked. I had a baby. I went back to public relations consulting, did that for a while, had some success doing that. And then my family and I moved to Atlanta. And so now this is like 2013, 2014. And my son was going off to kindergarten. My husband is an executive with the Fortune 50 company, and for the first time in my life, I didn't have anything for me. So I said, "Well, what's like the craziest thing I can do?" And I Googled stand-up comedy, and there was a class starting, and I took the class, and that was 8.5 years ago. I've been doing it ever since.
Wow, this was your like, it's my turn, next chapter. Like, kid goes off to kindergarten, mama gets on stage.
Yeah, I mean, mama talks about it because she's a little ticked off about it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it
You
was
needed
like
an outlet. I mean, you needed
I
an
needed an
outlet, and that was
outlet.
a socially approved outlet, you know?
And it was supposed to be a one and done.
Sure.
I was like, I'm gonna go do something else now. I'm gonna do this comedy thing just to say I did it. Next stop, jump out of an airplane. I didn't know. Instead, I just stayed on stage. And um back to what you said about innovation women, a few years into it, I realized like women in comedy, we still didn't have a voice. We still didn't have a place. We were still being told we're not funny. We were still showing up and being on shows where there would be 20 guys and one woman. And so I created the show that I wanted to be booked on. So I created Laugh Lines and Stretch Marks, which is my all female monthly showcase of amazing female comedians. And I've been doing that for 5 years, and it has been a crazy success. So
That's awesome. I love when people take charge of their lives and create their own stages, right? Instead of waiting to be like one of 21,
yeah.
hoping to get in and feeling like you're competing against other women for that one slot Instead, you created opportunities for all these women to be seen and heard and appreciated for their talent.
All
That's really
women and
cool.
all or in all, yeah, all women, all perspectives. Within the genre of female comedians, I wanted to show that we can be funny. We can have a show of all, women and women identifying comedians that and not talk about the same things.
Right.
And it
Right.
and it be hilarious. And I'll tell you, it has scratched an itch, and I am the only all-female monthly comedy show in all of Atlanta, and it's 2023.
Yeah. Yeah. So people need it. That's
Mhm.
really cool. I mean, that also is a very entrepreneurial spirit. The fact that you were thinking about building community in that way and and hosting something. How did the pandemic shift some of that? Because I imagine you were gathering at comedy clubs, and then 2020 happens. So and
Yeah,
you were a couple years in
2020
at that point. Yeah.
2020 happened, and, that was probably our biggest challenge in the industry, and it was the biggest challenge for me, and it was very interesting because a couple of things happened. Some comedy shifted to, Zoom and, online platforms pretty quickly and pretty easily, and that presented a real challenge because although I had niched out a nice little career here for me in Atlanta, nationwide. I'm known in some places and not in others. And so when comedy switched to an online platform, when a show can book anybody, people who have really great credits and whatever, they're not going to book me, right? Like they're not going to necessarily book the what I call myself a stay-at-home alcoholic. That's what I call myself on stage. Who has a nice little show in the suburbs of Atlanta. So it was sort of, on one hand, it was hard to stay relevant. On the other hand, there were a lot of comedians that refused to do online comedy because they didn't want people to get used to it. They felt like comedy wasn't meant to be consumed that way. I viewed it very differently. I actually loved doing online shows. So then I did a couple of things where I would produce online shows um, just to keep some of my comedians paid, just to get them some, getting some money coming in, but also because I just liked the format. I feel like if you do it well and if you do it right, it can be very engaging and engaging in a way that in a club can't be. And when I'm looking at little squares of people, when they have their cameras on and their cat runs across the computer or whatever, like that's a joke. That's an opportunity to engage, or when they're eating their ramen while they're watching the show or whatever, that's an opportunity to engage. And so I really so I embraced it. I leaned into it. I sort of harnessed it, but it also forced me to do this thing that I'd been thinking about, and that was bring my business communications and my comedy together. And the Venn diagram created this custom comedy for companies looking to just give their employees a laugh break in a very stressful time. So I ended up getting hired by companies to jump onto their sales meetings or their kickoff meetings or their year-end stuff or their year-end or beginning of the year employee conferences and just make people laugh. And I decided to do it in a way that was different, in that not just bringing my normal comedy, because my normal comedy maybe isn't corporate clean, but taking my business communications experience and expertise and saying, great, let me do a deep dive into who you are as a company. What are your pain points? What are your challenges? And let me write jokes about that. And the jokes always, lift up and never punch down. And it really took off. It was exactly what people wanted and needed. And it really, I've done it live also, but there was just something about doing it on Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever that just really resonated with people.
Yeah. I love the innovation of that shift from, comedy for comedy's sake, and then realizing you had maybe something else to offer. You weren't getting access to the same stages that you might have been because the pandemic had changed everything. Like you, I embraced Zoom.
I know
Uh,
you did.
and it's funny because, at first I remember sitting there in March 2020, just really like a almost like scratch your head moment. Like, how are we gonna make this be engaging and interesting and enlightening and transformative? And I don't even think I was thinking that big. I was thinking just like, how do we make this not bad? In fact, no more bad Zoom came out of a joke. Someone said Zoom's a 4-letter word. Please, no more bad Zoom. And that was like on my first like Zoom that I hosted. Someone said, Zoom's a 4-letter word. We were like a week in to the pandemic and someone had already said that. And that's how I got nomoorbadzoom.com and started hosting my weekly event. But and like built an empire around it, right? Like, but I now see what you're saying. Like, I think that there is a lot that we can do with that medium, but if people haven't bothered to explore it, they're like so far behind on that thinking that they can't see it. And what I love about it is the surprise and delight where people expected it's like the bar is set really low. I used to teach networking all the time, and networking is one of these like, like
Yeah.
so. But like, I would come in and do everything except juggle to get their attention and get them paying it, to learn something, and they would
Right.
leave feeling so revived. And it reminds me a little of that. Like they're coming
Well,
into these Zoom calls like, ugh, and
and
then you show up.
what I love about that in what you're doing and in Zoom is it allows, so I have been a networker from day one, and it allows me, you, everybody to network with people we would never be in the same room with.
Right.
And I mean, I know that's such an obvious thing to say. It's like, duh. I mean, I know I'm not, I'm not like, breaking new ground here in saying that, but the people that I have met through Innovation Women, in particular, are the people that have become my business partner has come from that. I would have never met her. I would have never connected with a burnout expert who then said, "Hey, Heather, I want my stuff to be funnier. And by the way, we got together and I was like, you know what? We all know laughter, like raises your happy hormones and lowers your stress hormones. You're talking about burnout. Let's come together and create something that does both." Teaches them how to address their burnout and also gives them an immediate laugh break, which is immediately going to lower their stress. That would have never happened if not for a couple of things, one being the medium of Zoom and the other just being open to looking for those opportunities, and that's something you're really brilliant at.
So first of all, give a little shout out to your partner.
Oh, Dr. Sharon Grossman, the burnout doc, she's amazing. Go look her up.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We'll put information in the show notes. Yeah, I think, figuring how to translate something you did in person, like comedy, into this medium requires a lot of trial and error, a lot of
Mhm.
willingness to like fall flat. And the audience is really appreciative when you figure it out. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
even have to be a major revelation for them to be like, wow, that was actually a really good, we really enjoyed that. And like you said, now Zoom is like its own, like it offers new opportunities for jokes. Like we all have had like humor is sort of woven through what I do. I don't specifically focus on it, but I talk about that moment that everyone gets sent to breakout rooms and we're all muted and we don't know who should go first. We all kind of look around, we all hesitate, and then finally someone unmutes, right? Like, or when I got sent to breakout rooms and we're told to go in order of our birthdays, but we end up talking about horoscopes and how many times that's happened in the last 3 years. So we don't actually talk about the topic; we talk about our horoscopes. Like that's like a very Zoom specific or whatever. I happen not to be a fan of some of these other platforms, but like that's a very virtual platform. Yeah, you wouldn't get that joke unless you'd experience those moments.
So in
Um,
comedy, that is the things that make us laugh, right? Our shared
mhm.
experiences and common experiences and embarrassing moments and things like that. And so when we got to go on Zoom and see, like, hear, like, kids screaming in the background, toilets flushing, whatever, the doorbell ringing, or I used to have jokes about it, about how I had my own reality TV show. It was called My Husband's on a Zoom Meeting, and how his colleagues had to hear me screaming at my son, or whatever. Those are the things that those common shared experiences are the things that bond us, which then creates likability, authenticity, trust, things like that. And without people meeting with each other in their homes, while we were all just trying to figure it out, my poor husband was like wherever he could go. It took us like a year before we set him up an office. We just kept thinking, you're going to go back. You're going to go back. you know,
6 more weeks, 6 more weeks,
it's
6 more weeks.
just 2 weeks, honey. And then 2 weeks
Yeah,
turned into a
oh, yeah.
year. And he's still home like 2 or 3 days uh, out of the week. And so, yeah, it really gave us some insight, and it made us all realize that we're human and we're all dealing with, we all have kids, we all have roommates, we all have whatever. That we aren't alone. It was a really good way to show that we're not alone.
Yeah, my first time hosting something was March 13th, 2020. It was my first virtual happy hour, and like 20 people came on. And I didn't know at the time that I had some skill in the area of like online facilitation. I actually had some training in that because I had been trained to do masterminds virtually. And so I actually had a positive idea around like, oh, what was possible with Zoom, but I didn't realize that it was a skill that I could sell because no one was particularly looking for that pre March 2020.
For sure.
And I joked that the reason people were having a good time is that they weren't in charge of feeding someone. Like that these were people that they could just talk to that weren't like feed me. Like the only people we were talking to at that time were people in our own home who were demanding our attention and who should have been like at school. Like, it's like, and it was just the first day. Like that was the first
That
day,
was day one, March
13th.
13th, 2020, which, by the way, was a Friday.
Yeah.
I know that because I was trying to get on an airplane because I just gotten into a big comedy festival, and I was going to be in the same spot that Jeff Foxworthy and Fortune Feimster and all kinds of people were going to be. This was a huge opportunity for me. And I checked my phone one last time and they said, we are canceling the rest of the festival. So, and then we also found out that our kids weren't going to go to school for
Ever.
the next 2 weeks.
2 weeks or ever.
So
Right.
for you to jump on, Robbie, on that day and start to harness like Zoom, do you have any idea how innovative that was?
Well, I didn't know what else to do. I mean, kind of like you just do what you have to. Like I remember March 9th, I accepted it was happening because I was paying attention to Rachel Maddow and she'd been talking about it for a couple of months, but it was like over there, right? But then all of a sudden it was in Seattle. It wasn't just like over there, like a world away. It was in our country,
Right.
but on the other side of the country. But like, so I sort of, when March 9th happened, I think I kind of went, oh, I made my first donation to a local food bank, a monthly donation on March 9th, because I didn't want to live in the world of like scarcity. I knew that the business I had like around in-person networking at conferences was not going to continue as it had been in that moment.
Right.
And that like I didn't know what was next, but I thought we'll be fine. There's going to be a lot of people in need. Let me just open myself up to the opportunity and I'm going to start giving. And then Wednesday, I had that moment of like, what do I do? But it lasted all of 2 days, but it was a horrible 2 days. I will tell you.
It's a very destabilizing couple of
Yeah.
days. Yeah.
But
I mean, Monday when my son like was day one of virtual learning,
Robbie's
right?
joke.
20 minutes in, I popped a Xanax. I'm like, I can't deal with this.
Yeah.
It was a very
Oh,
destabilizing couple of days.
kids were so resilient. So I got a great talking to from my peer mastermind on Wednesday, and they kicked me in the butt and got me to think about how networking for me wasn't just something I did at events, but that I'd built a global network in previous 5 years. So how could I show people that? So on Thursday, I wrote a blog post, 9 ways to network in a pandemic. And the third option on that list was to host a virtual happy hour. So that night I was like, oh, I should do one of these. I posted a private note in a Facebook group that I'm a part of, like, hey, would folks come? got like a couple yeses right away, and then spent between 2 and 5 on Friday messaging and emailing everyone I know. Someone came who got the message at like 4:54 Eastern for a 5 o'clock event. She found the email just like a few months ago. But she started coming. And so I just was like, this is a thing I can do. It was just a feeling of like, how do I show up and offer value? And that's to your credit, similar, like how you transformed what you had been doing. Like you'd been hosting events in
Mhm.
person, you'd been speaking in person as a comedian. And now you're like, well, how do I do that? And then I love the idea that you then found ways into networking and doing this for companies. I'm actually curious how you made that leap. Like, how did you find the first few companies to trust you? First of all, comedians are not all clean. I know there's a whole brand of clean comedians now, but that, people don't
Right.
always know that's a thing. How did you find those first few companies? Was it referrals? Was it part of your network? Was it people who already knew you?
Yeah, it was. So, back to the networking combo. I got a lot of referrals from a Facebook group that I'm a part of, which is a women in marketing Facebook group. That they said, listen, we are looking to do something. Like they had already, like a lot of companies had already done what they could in their Zoom platforms to sort of like mix things up, like, oh, we had, goat yoga. I don't even know how you do that in Zoom, but they did it. And the Zoom bingo and the this and the that. We're looking for different things to do. And I said, I have an idea. How about you just have me come on and just do some comedy about what you guys are facing? And my value proposition, again, goes back to my business communications. And you don't have to worry about getting called into your HR department because the jokes are going to come from you. I'm going to get to know you and your brand and your values and what's important to you and what you're facing. And that's what we're going to joke about. And so then that keeps me in a lane, right? That keeps me in a very safe
Yeah.
space. And it made me innovate. It really made me think about companies. One of my clients was and once you get one, you can get others. But one of my clients was IT building a customer facing dashboard for a company that is a workman's compensation insurance company. If I can make that funny, y'all, I can make anything funny. I'm just here to tell you right now. And so it was really like you saw that this isn't going to go away and this is what people are going to need. You did it before people even knew they were going to need it because we all thought we were going to limp through for 2 weeks. I got into it a little later when we were like, I guess this is where we are. And people were very stressed out. And businesses, companies were just looking for a way to make their employees feel seen, heard, and appreciated. And that's what I promised I would do.
Well, in a second, we're going to get to my favorite wrap up question. But first, a word from our sponsor. Okay, so this is my favorite wrap up question. We're meeting a year from now, and I know we're going to still be in touch. We may even cross paths in person one of these days. Imagine that. So, a year from now, we're catching up, and I ask you what we're going to be celebrating about you. Like, what are we going to be toasting? What are you most looking forward to in the year ahead?
Oh, in the year ahead, I really look forward to doing more of what I've spent the last couple of years building, and that is really just bringing a laugh break to companies and organizations to again help their employees feel seen, heard, and appreciated. Because I feel like burnout is always going to be a thing. Stress is always going to be a thing, and I just really believe in investing. If the pandemic taught us anything, I think it's that our most important resources are our people. And we have to take care of our people. And, people are going to be asked to come back into the office at more and more and more regularly. And down the road, maybe things are going to feel like or look kind of more like they did, in 2019 than they do now. But I think that we've realized that people they still are wearing a lot of hats
Mm.
and we have to honor that. And so I hope that big companies, employers, whatever, will remember that these human resources are the people who kept your business going and homeschooled. And so these are hard things. And so I really hope that in a year from now, Robbie, you and I, we're going to sit down, we're going to have a cup of coffee or whatever drink of your choice, and I'm going to say I have been given the opportunity to bring custom comedy to this organization and that organization, organization, all because they valued their human resources, their people, and they wanted to give them a laugh break because they know that they need to feel seen, heard, and appreciated. And this is a great way to do it.
One laugh at a time. I can't
One
wait to
laugh at a
celebrate.
time.
Can't wait to celebrate that with you. I think you're so right. I feel like now that we've gotten to see how people are living and the intrusions in their life and the balance that they're trying to, negotiate every day, we can't unsee that as we start to maybe get back together in person. Thank you so much for sharing all this today, and just being part of this conversation. How can people find you and follow your work?
So mostly on website -up.com. Hyphen up is all one word. It makes fun of the fact that I have a hyphenated name, which I don't recommend. But and LinkedIn at Heather Tolley-Bauer. You can find me there. And yeah, those are the two best. Those are the two best places right now.
Fantastic. We'll put all those links in the show notes at ontheschmooze.com. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.